Hello everybody, this is Context Channel again. Second week we are doing this and we are glad you've been with us. I am with my friend Paul here. We want to dissect the issue Ruto speech in South Africa in some conference of African heads of state. We want to bring to attention to the challenges he brought up that Africans face. For example, going the 54 of them into some other country that invites them for a meeting, and all of them go, and he said that all of them don't find enough time to speak, said that all of them, each of them is given only 1.5 minutes, and they end up only with a good photo without having deliberated anything. It is funny, and we will be trying to put that into context with my genius friend here, Paul. Introduce yourself. Tell us something.
Okay, I'm Paul. Like I have been introduced, and I'm happy to be on this channel again and I'm excited to discuss this subject with him, with Simon. Yeah. So, can you now kick it off?
Yeah, thank you. I will.
But what happens continuously when others want to engage with us, they don't want to deal with a troika. They want to invite 50 heads of state. So we go to a meeting, just explain to me what kind of outcome you expect where 50 heads of state are sitting. Everybody is asked for speak to 1.5 minutes. You speak to for 1.5 minutes. What kind of engagement are you going to get? You're going to get nothing, right? The best that you get is photographs.
Ruto said the primary problem with that format is that there are usually very many African heads of state. We know we have around 53 or 54 African states, and all of them meeting one foreign head somewhere. He said it was cumbersome. Of course it is. And they don't end up deliberating much. True, that's it, they don't end up deliberating much. But my main concern here, which Paul will also illustrate or talk about, is the agenda. Like, if they are invited and all flock to one place and to discuss some issue said by another person, really, how do they expect to be called in somebody else's meeting and advance their own agenda? What do you have to say about that, Paul?
I have always had an issue with the very issue that Ruto raised in South Africa, right, and got a rapturous applause for. And it is not something that Ruto was the first person to highlight. Yeah. We've had, it coming from people like Paul Kagame of Rwanda. Yeah. The other day when, I don't know what event that was, but then he lectured, I think it was the BBC, about, Africans always joining in other people's agendas. Yeah. And when we have countries like the US and Russia having summits, yeah, like Russia-Africa Summit, the US-Africa Summit, then the agendas for those summits are not always meant to favor Africans, if you ask me. Yeah. It is always meant to create an illusion of Africa, yeah, feeling like they are part of a deal and that they also will benefit from those deals that they will end up crafting in those summits. Yeah. But then the agenda of those summits is not always Afrocentric. And that is why, yeah, nobody ever sees anything wrong with allocating 1.5 minutes for every African leader, and having all the 54 of them speak for themselves, yeah, and not sort of have a collective voice or something that unites the whole of Africa, or all of the 54 African countries. Yeah. and make them speak out there with one voice. And so I'm happy that Ruto raised that and made a really strong statement, which, you know, sounded like a protest statement.
I like the protest statement, but I also think there is misdiagnosis, because I thought next time Ruto or any other African president want to say something to that direction, I will expect our presidents to set an agenda for us. Our developmental needs are not the same as the Americans or the Chinese or the Russians, such that they should go there with what do they want to engage on, which projects do they want those people to fund, which output or raw materials from Africa. How can we maybe build industries right here than exporting raw materials and importing finished goods, which are more expensive? I mean, I should expect Africans for the next time to make some really, you know, to put their foot down and say something. For example, set the agenda, say if you want to meet us, this is what you will tell us, and this is what we will tell you, as opposed to having them going there, because if they only speak for 1.5 minutes, that means the rest of the time they are being dictated to, like school children.
Is that some of the people who invite us to these meetings tell us, if you don't come, there will be consequences. So all of us are forced to go to a meeting that has no meaningful outcome because of blackmail. This is not right, good people. You know, this is not okay, you know? So I have written to my brother who was here the other day that this time round, any other invitation, it must respect the rules of our continent.
That means we elect our presidents to go there and be dictated to. I would like to call attention to...
Just be lectured, right?
Yeah, they've been lectured. You remember something like the Bangui conference of the 50s or the 60s, where we had at least maybe the Africans and the Chinese meeting in the third country, and that was probably equal, whereby you have that power, large country, meeting with other countries it wants to engage with, but not in its capital. Not going there to dictate them, but with them, but to engage somewhere else where maybe they may feel equal. What do you have to say about that, maybe in future?
You know, there is something that we have always let these bigger economic powers, the Western powers and stuff, to get away with.
Yeah.
And it is because we choose to play small, like all the time, and we just feel excited about, you know, being invited to these places and, you know, having to fly out with huge delegations, and maybe the government, the allowances that you know, the president and his delegates get from attending those summits.
Maybe relatives too.
And and we don't get to question or to look at really the things that matter, the things that we need to look at, the things that, you know, if we analyzed or we looked at critically, then we would easily realize that we are always ending with the short end of the stick. Like all the time, because you know, the tradition of lining up African presidents, you have African presidents lining up, and then the American president, you know, standing somewhere, and so that African presidents can greet him, you know, one after the other, as, you know, beautiful photos get snapped of them, and then when we have these photos,
maybe acting like flower girls or something. Yeah,
when we have these photos published on official, maybe online platforms of, you know, the respective African countries or governments, then you will have people, you know, feeling excited that their president has, you know, the blessing of an American president, has been endorsed or has the legitimacy and stuff like that. And this is an African problem, because even the African people themselves have been conditioned to be excited about things like that.
Small things.
Small things like that, like, you know, American president and our president, and this looks really nice and stuff like that. So, if we open our eyes and look at the bigger picture, you know, look at the bigger picture, then we can be sure to, you know, be really a meaningful part of the agenda, and then we can also take our agenda out there and tell those guys that this is what we need from you in this deal that we are going to have. This is what our interest is. And just make a bold statement about it and put their feet on the ground and make themselves heard. And the idea of having these summits in the capital of those superpowers like maybe New York or Washington is not good.
It's not.
It's never a good idea, because you are going to someone's home ground and they are the ones who have the agenda for the summit, and they are not going to give you enough time to put out your collective position. Yes. So if we could have these summits happen in, you know, a neutral ground where an African president would not feel intimidated by, you know, the bigger or the economically more powerful country, then that would perhaps be a lot better than you know, what we have always had as the tradition.
Let me ask you about something here that I would like us also to put into context. I want you to note something about the Europeans, especially England or the UK, and maybe America, the US. We have our leaders who are educated in the US and in English. We speak their language. Some of our African leaders maybe have stolen or illegally or inappropriately acquired money there. And some of them really have been conditioned to feel more European, associating European or maybe the English or the American culture with civilization, civility. And the rest of Africans who maybe have never flew there, maybe they are seen like, you know, the traditional ones, the backward ones. Now, with all this maybe clique of African leaders, Western educated, gotten degrees in the West, you know, have money stashed there, maybe have buildings and apartments there. Do you think, can they represent the ordinary Kenyans or the ordinary Africans in an objective way? Or do we have maybe Europe A discussing with Europe B, that is our elite Africans, about remote Africa?
That cannot happen. You cannot expect that to happen, because we have people at the top who are, I want to avoid using a really bad term that is normally used, but kissing something. And then, you know, sticking up for the West, and just feeling like, you know, it is okay for the West to be the ones setting the agenda for us, and there is nothing that we should never question the agenda that the West is putting for us to adopt and join in, you know. So I think that is also a tragedy, and it contributes to this problem and makes it even more, you know, complicated for us to try to change things and get things done in a different way, or like we would want, and just to make the African voice or the African position known to those guys. We can never have a strong position when we have our own leaders and our own experts who are sticking up for the West, who are conditioned to feel like there is nothing that we can propose that would be good enough to put in front of the West,
of the Europeans,
and even think that they would adopt it.
The last thing, maybe let's talk about sovereignty. President Ruto talked about how the Europeans don't respect our sovereignty, and I was asking myself, how can they respect our sovereignty, they are not told off even when they do wrong things. For example, we had the Americans, for example, that our black cousin, Floyd, who is now, I don't know, the Secretary of Defense or something like that, telling us like we should not trade with the Chinese and the Russians because they bring destabilization. And not forgetting that they converted Somalia, our neighbor here, into dead weight around our neck. And no African stood, to tell that guy off, really, because he's a salesman for arms manufacturers. Before he got that post, he was a salesman for arms manufacturers, and it's known. Isn't it interesting that the Africans just kept quiet, waited for that to pass? And another issue I would like to remind you, I know you know, Ruto said very well that we Africans are given money for studies, but we are not given money for implementations. And the type of studies I imagine we are given for is not an independent study, it's not money to study what you want, it's money through their think tanks they want to bring out their recommendations they would like, and then those recommendations lie in shelves, and Ruto is complaining. I mean, if you wanted to be respected, maybe we should put our voice there first and use our own money, maybe sometime.
Talking of studies, which studies? Whose studies? Who is the originator of these studies in whose interest are these studies conducted?
Yeah, I know you know some of these studies that are one-sided that we'll discuss later. Yeah, I know what you're thinking about, and we'll talk about them later.
Being given money for one thing and not money for the other thing. Why should we be given
money in the first place?
This money in the first place. Why do we need money coming from another place to do things for ourselves here?
It's funny.
These are the problems that we should be talking about, because you cannot on the one hand talk about needing your sovereignty to be respected, and on the other hand still complain about money that you're getting from the people that you want to you are begging to respect your sovereignty. And you still see them as a really indispensable source of money for you to do things for yourselves.
I think even if they, however they present us, I think they're among the reasons why the whites or the Westerners will always think that African project or our national projects are not viable, because just imagine this day and age, having Africans asking money to run their own programs. Isn't that absurd? And then the other question that maybe was lost is, what can we say that an American official, the Secretary of Defense, can tell Africans who or who not to trade with, and receive no response from African heads? What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't even know what to really comment on that, because we are just enablers of. I mean, these guys have always, and we have let them to initiate conversations and to even determine how these deliberations and how these discussions are taking place, and in what sort of environment these discussions are taking place. And when you have that kind of an environment for deliberating on anything, then there is no way that you will end up being the winner. But then the way that these guys craft all of these things, they normally craft them and lace them with some things that are supposed to excite you, so that as you come out of these summits, out of these meetings, then you have an illusion of a winner, and you think that there's something that you have got for your people from those summits, and like Africa has won, and but then you will never really see what the Western powers have gained from the same meeting. So
and sometimes it is usually everything, but it's hidden.
But then you will never know. The only time you realize is when the implementation starts, And then you realize that and sometimes you might not even realize that those guys are taking everything. You are being left with nothing. You might never realize because we have given them so much power, and we have become so blind to their machinations and their schemes that even as these things get implemented, we still don't see what these guys are winning, what these guys are getting from all of these things. And then there's something that you talked about, which I feel might get lost in this, and we have to really talk about it. And I think that was the most anticlimactic thing that Ruto said in, as part of his speech in South Africa. That he expects the West to now start feeling human and then, fold their industries and bring them and then bring them to Africa in the interest of humanity and just, feel guilty that they have not done Africa well for so many years, and now it's time for them to shut down their industries and now bring them to Africa.
The clearest path available to humanity, not just to us, available to humanity, is to relocate global industrial production capacity to Africa, and therefore meet Africa's as well as the world's growing demand for goods and services in a green-first manner that also enables the continent to leapfrog the industrial development path taken by the global north. An African green industrial capacity will not only serve global demand, but it will also decarbonize global production, thereby fulfilling humanity's most ambitious climate goals. This is the very honest conversation we want to have. We are saying we can have a win-win.
That's not possible. We know it's pathetic. It won't happen. The Europeans have their industries to preserve. If Ruto wants to industrialize this country or Africa, there should be another way. That one will not be happening. Maybe it's high time that courageous people like you tell him that can never happen.
And Simon, this still adds to the other thing that we talked about, where we have the West bringing money to Africa for executing a very specific, very particular projects that they studies that they have interest in, and Ruto complaining that it is time these guys bring money for doing one thing and not for doing another thing. So, like, we are always waiting for the West to bring us money because we cannot generate any money for ourselves, or we cannot get internally generate finances for ourselves to do our stuff. And I think it is in the same light that he expects the West to fold their industries, because things should always be coming from the West, and they should do that as a favor to Africans, and because they should now start feeling humane, and that they have been evil all along. And so, is it not possible for us to just do all of these things for ourselves and set up industries? Because I think we have all the natural and resources that we need, and those guys actually need us more than we need them. So the earlier we realized that, the better for us as Africans, or else we will still keep hearing people bragging, or African presidents bragging about Africa being the next big thing.
It has been the next for the last half a century.
Africa having some potential that we will unleash, and just making these grand statements and convoluted statements that I think are supposed to scare the West. But then I don't think it really ever scares them. They sit and watch these speeches and even laugh at us. So that is it.
That's it.
For now, I guess.
It is. And maybe to prepare ourselves and our audiences psychologically, we have something to do about those studies that we are talking about, the studies that are funded to be done here, and who they benefit?
I think that is a discussion that we need to have.
Exactly. And of course, I know you know the topic, so viewers, please like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. We will be bringing it often. And
share with your friends who you also feel would be interested in this type of content. And make sure to hit the notification button so